Hello and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be covering the talents that I prefer to use in PvP for a subtlety burst build. I wanted to do an opener video today, but I just don't have enough time, so I'm going to save that for tomorrow, as I'd like to cover it in more detail. I have included some openers though for reference at the end of this video. Without further delay, let's move on to the honor talents that affect your burst as a subtlety rogue in PvP. Fortunately, there's not too many talents you have to worry about when trying to optimize your burst in PvP. The best options for burst are Cold Blood and Phantom Assassin in the final row. Phantom Assassin has got a redesign this patch. It used to just increase the duration of Shadow Dance, so it was about 8 seconds in PvP if you had Subterfuge as well. Now it just makes it so we have an increased critical strike chance, and this talent coupled with the PvP template gives us about an 82% crit chance during Shadow Dance or Stealth, which gives us some pretty nasty burst. It's actually providing more damage than Thief's Bargain is, and Thief's Bargain is now more of a utility thing. I believe it could still see some use, but I'll cover that in another video. The only other honor talent that really affects our damage is potentially Honor Among Thieves. However, I believe we have enough combo points as is, and just to note, I guess Honor Among Thieves you can proc it yourself, so it is useful when you buy yourself, but I believe that Thieves Gambit and Smoke Bomb are just all around better, and for the most part you shouldn't take this talent. Dagger in the Dark could be seen as an alternative to Cold Blood. However, the downside is it puts a debuff on your enemy, and then they have a visual indication that you're actually around them, which just gets you found and stuff in stealth, and that's really no good. The reason why Cold Blood is so vital for burst is even if somebody blows a defensive cooldown like a Warrior Shield Wall, which reduces their damage by like 40%, this will still do the full 10% of the target's health through that. So it can be used for some pretty cheeky kills against things like Shadow Priest, I guess, during Dispersion, which pretty much stops almost all damage. I believe it's like 60 to 95% depending on their honor talents. But yeah, I've definitely killed a few Shadow Priests through Disperse just because they disperse so late, and then I just tagged them with Cold Blood. Pretty nice. Now, moving on to our regular talents. There's a lot more talents here that affect how much burst we can do, and the talents I have selected are far from the only options, but they're just the options I believe will provide you the greatest burst damage. And I will definitely make other videos covering different builds and situational uses of other talents. In the level 15 talent row, the option that's going to provide you the most consistent burst is Master of Subtlety. It's up permanently during Shadow Dance, and the 5-second delay doesn't start until after Shadow Dance ends, so it's a really nice damage increase. Weapon Master, of course, can provide some lucky damage increases, but it's nowhere near consistent. And Gloomblade will have some tricky uses I'll cover in a future video. It's actually pretty cool. In the 30 talent row, Subterfuge I believe will be the most consistent damage option, as it increases Shadow Dance duration by 1 second, and through this build and the use of Dark Shadows, Shadow Dance will increase our damage dealt by now 25%. It's already been nerfed by 5% since yesterday, but it's still a really nice damage increase. Shadow Focus is pretty much useless, as I believe we don't really have energy problems at all, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I really don't believe this is a very useful talent. And Night Stalker, you can do some pretty funny things with it as well. However, it's more important, I believe, to have the slightly longer Shadow Dances, but I do believe this talent is viable, at least as far as Battlegrounds and World PvP go, so you can use it if you'd like. Moving on to our level 45 talent row, I've selected Deeper Stratagem as it abuses Shadow Blades way more than Vigor ever could. I also don't believe we necessarily need the energy increase as far as burst goes, because through things like Goremaws Bite and just our artifact passives that recover energy, we just don't have energy problems during burst scenarios, and that's what the spec's all about. If you prefer to play Vigor, you can still definitely select that, as it does have its advantages. You burst a little less hard, but it allows you more frequent uses of things like Feint and Arena, and it's just an overall strong option as well. Most rogues do prefer to play Vigor, and it is probably better than Deeper Stratagem. However, Deeper Stratagem bursts hardest at rogue's maximum potential. I believe Anticipation to be a viable option as well, as it abuses Shadow Blades pretty good too. You can get some nice back-to-back Eviscerates and abuse the Finality artifact trait. However, you don't get any passive really, as I believe the passive from both Deeper Stratagem and Vigor are both more viable than Anticipation in general, and you should probably overlook this talent for now. In the level 60 talent row, even though it doesn't affect our burst, I believe that you should go with Elusiveness almost all the time, as the effectiveness of Soothing Darkness is reduced in PvP, and its value has gone even down further now that our Shadow Dances are only 5 seconds instead of 8. In the following row, the only talent you should be looking at for a burst build is Prey on the Weak, as it's the only thing that provides a damage increase here. In the level 90 row, we have the bread and butter of this entire spec, Dark Shadows. While Shadow Dance is active, all damage we deal is increased by 30%. You should know that in PvP, it's actually only 25%, but it's still a crazy increase, and it provides far more burst damage than any other talent in this entire row. And finally, in the level 100 row, I go with Mark for Death. All talents in this row are very viable and used for different things. Death from Above can also provide some very good burst. However, with the shortened Shadow Dance duration and the effect of Dark Shadows, the effect of Death from Above just takes too long, I believe, to fully abuse the effect of Dark Shadows. When it comes to maximizing your burst though, just stick with Mark for Death. However, Death from Above should be considered sometimes, as the iframes that you get from going into the air, and by iframes I mean immunity. So if someone casts a CC and you're in the air, you will be immune to it. The moment you leave the ground until just before you hit the ground, you're immune to CC. It's actually very powerful and is very good against things like mages, and it actually provides us with a little bit extra mobility, which is welcomed after the change with Shadowstrike. Lastly, before I go, I'll leave you with a couple openers. I'm not going to go into too much detail as I'm going to cover that in an opener video tomorrow. For now, this is just a standard high burst opener. I'm not going to be making full use of the energy recovery effects of things like Goremaws Bite and Symbols of Death, but this will provide a very high damage burst in a short-term duration. First off, you're already going to have Cold Blood active. You can activate it later if you choose in the burst rotation, but it just makes it a little easier to get the hang of if you have it up from the beginning. Then you're going to pop Shadow Blades, open with Cheap Shot, pop Symbols of Death and Shadow Dance for their damage increases. Then you're going to Goremaws Bite for 6 combo points and use a full Nightblade. Then you're going to use Mark for Death, Eviscerate into a Cheap Shot, Shadowstrike, and follow up with another Eviscerate. This should give you a nice starting point for a burst opener. I know that was very quick, and I'm sorry it was so brief, but like I said, tomorrow I'm going to go into more detail and slow it right down for you guys. Until then, I hope this was at least a little bit helpful. I appreciate all the feedback I got so far on my previous video, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. So please don't hesitate to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos. Have a good day.